The tension in the courtroom hung thick in the air. Judge Margaret Sullivan had seen many difficult cases in her 30-year career, but today's hearing was different. Standing before her was Robert Hayes, one of the city's most prominent detectives. Also a man known for his openly racist views. Detective Hayes had been explaining the rise in crime rates over the past 6 months by making references to certain communities. Today, he was scheduled to testify in the case of Marcus Johnson's client, a young African-American lawyer. "Your Honor," Marcus said, standing up, "I believe Detective Hayes's testimony in this case will be prejudiced." Hayes snorted and shot Marcus a dismissive look. "Young man," he said, raising his voice, "are you trying to teach me how to do law here? I've been doing this job since before you were born." A murmur rose from the gallery. Marcus's heart was beating fast, but he was determined to stay calm. "Detective Hayes, this isn't about experience, it's about justice." "Justice?" Hayes laughed mockingly. "Your kind's understanding of justice is different from ours, boy." At these words, former District Attorney William Carter, who was sitting in the gallery, stood up. Carter was in his 70s, white-haired, and a respected man. Everyone in the city knew him, and his words carried great weight. "Your Honor, may I have the floor?" Carter said, his voice filling the courtroom. Judge Sullivan nodded. "Of course, Mr. Carter." Carter slowly stood up and turned to Detective Hayes. His voice was calm but determined. "Detective Hayes, I've known you for over 20 years. I know you're a good cop. But what you said here today is unbecoming of both you and this courtroom." Hayes frowned. "Mr. Carter, what do you mean?" "What I mean is this," Carter said, speaking loud enough to reach every corner of the courtroom. "This young lawyer, Marcus Johnson, is just trying to defend his client. Just like you try to catch criminals, he's seeking justice. You're both on the same side, the side of justice." Carter took a step forward. "I served as district attorney in this city for decades. Let me tell you something. Justice knows no color, no religion, no origin. Justice is only about separating right from wrong." The courtroom had fallen completely silent. Carter continued, "Detective Hayes, when you say you're kind, you're not just belittling Marcus. You're also belittling the founding values of this country. Equality, freedom, justice. These don't apply to just certain people. They apply to all of us." Hayes shook his head, but Carter continued, "I know you're a good cop. But being a good cop isn't just about catching criminals. Being a good cop is also about protecting every segment of society equally. And this is only possible by setting aside our prejudices." Carter turned to Marcus. "And you, young man, you'll face prejudices in your professional journey. But never forget that every time you stand against prejudice with respect and determination, you're not just defending yourself, but future generations." He turned back to Hayes. "Detective, I have a request for you. Work with this young lawyer. See how talented and dedicated he is. Because our justice system is strengthened when we all work together." Hayes remained silent for a long time. Not a single sound came from the gallery. Finally, he took a deep breath. "Mr. Carter," Hayes said, his voice much softer than before. "You're right. I spoke wrongly." He turned to Marcus. "Attorney Johnson, I apologize to you. My words were unprofessional and unacceptable." Marcus nodded. "I accept your apology, Detective Hayes." Carter smiled. "Now we see real justice. People being able to admit their mistakes and try to be better." Judge Sullivan banged her gavel on the desk. "This is good. Now we can return to the real matter, ensuring justice." As the hearing continued, an unexpected cooperation began between Hayes and Marcus. When Hayes's experience combined with Marcus's legal knowledge, the facts of the case became clearer. After the hearing, Hayes approached Marcus. "Attorney Johnson," he said, "Mr. Carter was right. I learned a lot working with you. Maybe I can be a better cop from now on." Marcus extended his hand. Detective Hayes, we're all continuing to learn. What's important is being open to learning." They shook hands. From that day on, Hayes's behavior began to change. He started communicating more respectfully with people from all segments of society. He worked with Marcus on several more cases and developed a strong professional partnership. 6 months later, Hayes gave a speech at the city's police academy. "Prejudice," he said, "blinds justice. As a police officer, my duty is to protect everyone equally, no matter their color, religion, or origin." Marcus was there that day, among the listeners. Hayes concluded his speech. "I thank the people who taught me this lesson, especially my young colleague Marcus Johnson, who approached me with patience, and the Honorable William Carter, who showed us the right path." The hall filled with applause. Years passed. Hayes became one of the city's most respected police officers, now working not just on crime rates, but also for social peace. Marcus became a famous civil rights attorney and fought against injustice for disadvantaged communities. The two often worked together and played important roles in the city's fight against injustice. One day, journalist Sarah Mitchell was interviewing Hayes. "Detective Hayes," the journalist said, "could you tell us what happened on that courtroom day that changed you?" Hayes took a deep breath. "That day, William Carter gave me the most important lesson. I learned that I shouldn't see justice only from my own perspective." Marcus Johnson also approached me with patience and understanding, showing me that change was possible. And what do you tell young people now? I tell them we shouldn't be afraid to face our prejudices. We need to learn to apologize when we make mistakes, listen to different perspectives, and most importantly, treat everyone with equal respect. Justice is only possible this way. That interview resonated throughout the city. Many people were inspired by Hayes' story and began to confront their own prejudices. Marcus called Hayes after reading the interview. "Detective, I read that beautiful interview," he said. "Marcus," Hayes said, laughing, "my life has changed since that day. And I owe this change to you and William Carter." "No," Marcus said. "You owe this change to yourself because you were open to listening and learning." That evening, Hayes sat at home, discussing that day with his wife. "You know, Linda," he said to his wife, "sometimes life gives us the most unexpected lessons. That day in court, I thought I was right. But actually, I couldn't see how I was blinding justice." His wife smiled. "What's important is that you were able to learn." "Yes, and now I understand that real strength lies in being able to hold our differences together. Marcus's experience, my experience, both are important for serving justice." The next day, Hayes was having a meeting with young officers at the police station. "Friends," he said, "I'm going to tell you something. This profession isn't just about catching criminals. This profession is about earning the community's trust. And trust can only be earned by protecting everyone equally." A young officer asked, "Detective Hayes, but sometimes we have prejudices. How should we deal with them?" Hayes smiled. "Good question. First, we need to acknowledge them. I had prejudices too. But then, I had to listen to different perspectives to see how these prejudices hindered justice. By learning from people like Marcus Johnson," another officer added. "Exactly. Marcus taught me a lot, not just about legal matters, but also about empathy. And William Carter showed me that experience doesn't justify prejudice." After the meeting, Hayes reflected to himself. That day in court had truly been the turning point of his life. Being able to overcome his prejudices had positively affected not just himself, but everyone around him. This story also began to be told in the city's schools. Teachers gave Hayes and Marcus's story as an example when teaching students tolerance and empathy. A teacher told her class, "Children, the most beautiful thing about this story is this. Hayes admitted his mistakes and changed. Marcus was patient with him. Carter wasn't afraid to say what was right. Together, they all achieved justice." A student raised her hand. "Teacher, Does this mean people can change? Yes, dear. When people are open to learning and changing, wonderful. Transformations are possible. This story continued to be told in the city for years. When Hayes retired, Marcus spoke at his honor ceremony. The day Detective Hayes and I first met, there were big differences between us. But that day, William Carter's wisdom, Hayes's open-mindedness, and all of our belief in justice came together. And since that day, this city has become a more just place. Hayes hugged Marcus after the speech. "Marcus," he said, "you taught me the most valuable lesson. Our differences exist not to divide us, but to strengthen us." That night, Hayes sat at home thinking about the years. Once he was a police officer who acted with prejudices. Now he had become someone who defended justice and equality. And this change had begun in that courtroom, with William Carter's brave words, Marcus's patience, and his own open-mindedness. This story wasn't just the story of three men. This was the story of how a society could change, how prejudices could be overcome, and how justice could find its true meaning. And most beautifully, this change was still continuing, every day, with every new generation, because justice isn't something that's won once. Justice is a value that needs to be rebuilt every day, expanded to include everyone. Years later, the legacy continues. 10 years later, the city had undergone a major transformation. In the third year of Hayes's retirement, Marcus was now a partner in one of the region's most respected law firms. William Carter, at 80, still occasionally provided legal consulting. One summer day, all three met at the opening of the city's new Justice Building. This building was designed jointly by architects from different ethnic backgrounds, a modern structure reflecting the city's diversity. "Look at this building," Carter said as the three stood side by side. "It emerged from ideas from different cultures coming together, just like our story that day." Hayes laughed. "William, you've always been able to see the big picture." "Because the big picture is made up of small moments," Carter replied. "Our small moment that day in court was the beginning of a change that reached all the way to this building." Marcus looked at the young people walking around. "And now the new generation is continuing from where we left off." At the opening ceremony, the city's new young mayor was giving a speech. Maria Rodriguez was a lawyer of Mexican origin and one of the people Marcus had mentored. "This Justice Building," Maria said, "is not just a building. This is a symbol of hope, that we are all equal, that everyone will be treated justly. And I thank everyone who contributed to making this hope real, especially Hayes, Johnson, and Carter." The crowd applauded. Hayes's eyes welled up. After the ceremony, the three sat and chatted at a nearby cafe. "Have you ever thought," Marcus said, "what our lives would have been like if what happened that day in court hadn't happened?" Hayes nodded. "I would probably still be working as a prejudiced police officer. And maybe this city would never have become so peaceful." "What's important," Carter said, "is that we evaluated that moment correctly. Because life gives us opportunities every day, but we don't know how to evaluate all of them." Marcus looked thoughtful as he stirred his coffee. "You know, last week a young police officer came to me. He wanted help with a case. This young man was talking with prejudice, just like Hayes used to." Hayes asked curiously, "What did you do?" "I told him your story. That day in court, William's speech, your transformation. Everything." "And what happened?" Carter asked. "At first he resisted, but then he started listening. And now that young police officer is working with me on various community projects." Hayes smiled proudly. "So our story continues to inspire new generations." "Yes, but not just the story," Carter said. "The change we experienced is effective because it's real. People see that change is possible." At that moment, the cafe door opened and a young woman entered. Detective Lisa Park was a Korean-American police officer whom Hayes had mentored. When she saw Hayes, she approached with a smile. Detective Hayes, how nice to see you here. And Marcus, Mr. Carter, all of you together. Lisa, how are you, my dear? Hayes said, standing up. I'm fine, thank you. Actually, I have news for you. Last week, I solved a difficult situation using the social dialogue method you taught me. All three listened with interest. There was tension between different ethnic groups in the northern neighborhood of the city. Before, I might have just enforced the rules. But using what I learned from you, I first listened to everyone. Then I focused on finding common ground. And? Marcus asked curiously. Now the residents of that neighborhood organize monthly meetings and solve their problems together. And they invite me as a mediator too. Carter applauded. This is real police work. Not just catching criminals, but keeping the community together. Hayes touched Lisa's shoulder. I'm proud of you. You took what we learned one step further, Lisa smiled shyly. I learned from all of you, especially that courtroom story of yours. That story became a guide for me. Carter spoke with a thoughtful expression. You know, this story is now spreading beyond the city. Last month, police officers and lawyers from other cities came and interviewed us. Really? Marcus asked in surprise. Yes, and several of them have started similar dialogue programs in their own cities. Hayes closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if William hadn't spoken that day in court. Carter laughed. But I did speak. Because sometimes we shouldn't remain silent. Sometimes we have to say what's right, whatever the consequences. And I listened, Hayes said. That was also very important. Because a person who doesn't know how to listen can't change. Marcus leaned on the table. So what do we do now? How do we take this story even further? Lisa spoke excitedly. Actually, I have an idea. We could start a course at the police academy based on your story. Something like social justice and police relations. Hayes's eyes lit up. Great idea. I could contribute too. I could share my real experiences. Marcus got excited too. I could also give a similar class at the law school. On prejudice and justice. Carter nodded thoughtfully. And I, as an experienced lawyer, could mentor young attorneys. This way these values would be passed on to new generations. Lisa clapped her hands. This is wonderful. Approaching the topic from 3 different angles, police, lawyer, and experienced jurist, we could create a really effective program. Hayes stood up. Then what are we waiting for? Let's get started right away. The beginning of the project 6 months later, the Justice Bridges program began. The program was built on 3 main pillars: police training, legal education, and social dialogue. Hayes, in his first class at the police academy, said, I'm not going to just tell you theory. I'm going to tell you about my own mistakes and how I corrected them. Because real learning begins with acknowledging our mistakes. Marcus, in his class at the law school, spoke like this. Law is not just about applying statutes. Law is about reminding us that every person has equal rights. And this requires us to constantly fight our prejudices. Carter, in the mentorship program, worked one-on-one with young lawyers. He taught them, experience is important, but experience can sometimes create prejudice. What's important is combining our experience with wisdom. 6 months after the program started, they began to see the first results. Police complaints had decreased by 40%. Dialogue between different communities had increased, and the sense of justice in the courts had strengthened. One day, Hayes and Marcus were going to a meeting together. While chatting in the car, Hayes sighed. Marcus, sometimes it feels like that day in court never happened. But then I look around and see how much everything has changed. Marcus smiled. That's how change happens. First you don't notice it, then you start seeing it everywhere. Have you ever regretted it, being patient with me that day? Marcus thought, no, I never regretted it. Because patience is one of the most powerful weapons in fighting injustice. If you had attacked me and I had attacked you back, nothing would have changed in that courtroom. Hayes nodded. William said the same thing. He said anger only creates more anger. Carter is a wise man. His speech that day changed not just you, but all of us. When they arrived at the meeting hall, there were people from different segments of the city there. The police chief, the mayor, community leaders, teachers, religious leaders. This sight, Marcus said, is exactly the kind of unity William dreamed of. Hayes proudly surveyed the surroundings. And it all started with that small moment in that courtroom. At the meeting, the changes in the city were evaluated. The statistics were very positive. Decrease in crime rates, increase in education levels, increase in interracial marriages, dramatic decrease in hate crimes. After the meeting, a young journalist approached Hayes. "Detective Hayes, may I ask you a question?" "Of course. You and Marcus are now very close friends. But that day in court you were really enemies. How is this possible?" Hayes thought. "Because we both wanted the same thing, justice. It just took time for us to see this. And William Carter helped us see it." The journalist took notes and asked, "So what advice do you give to young people?" "Face your prejudices. Listen to different people. And most importantly, learn to apologize when you make mistakes. Change is possible with these three things." Conclusion. The continuing journey today. 15 years have passed since that day in court. Hayes is now 70 years old, but still actively works on community projects. Marcus is the president of an organization fighting injustice at the state level. Carter, at 85, is teaching his grandchildren the values of justice and tolerance. The change in their city is now being held up as an example nationwide. The Justice Bridges program has begun to be implemented in dozens of cities. But all three know the work isn't finished yet. Justice is a value that needs constant renewal. Each new generation must rediscover and apply these values in their own lives. Last week, Hayes was going to the park with his granddaughter. 5-year-old Emma asked him, "Grandpa, why are you always friends with people of different colors?" Hayes knelt down and looked at his granddaughter. "Because, Emma, people are valuable not just for their appearance, but for their hearts, and I want to know all the beautiful hearts." Emma thought, "Then when I grow up I'll be like you too." Hayes smiled. "You already have a very beautiful heart, sweetheart. Just keep growing it." That evening Hayes called Marcus. "Marcus, today I tried to explain the concept of justice to Emma." "How did it go?" "Very well. Children naturally think fairly. Our job is to protect this natural justice. Absolutely. And Emma's generation will reap the fruits of the change we started." "I hope so. And I hope they create a better world than us." "They will," Marcus said confidently. "Because we showed them the right example." After hanging up the phone, Hayes thought about what happened that day in court. He saw how a moment could change a lifetime, even generations. Prejudice, hatred, and injustice still existed in the world. But now there was also a strong hope standing against them. And this hope continued to grow every day. William Carter's words from that day still echoed in his ears. Justice knows no color, no religion, no origin. Justice is only about separating right from wrong. And Hayes knew these words would remain true forever, because justice was one of humanity's most fundamental values. And protecting this value was everyone's responsibility. At midnight, Hayes wrote the following in his diary. "Today I thought about what we experienced 15 years ago. That day in court, I was a prejudiced police officer. Today I am someone who serves justice. This change was possible with William's courage, Marcus's patience, and my open-mindedness. And now this change has spread to thousands of people. Perhaps our most beautiful achievement is this, a moment turning into an infinite wave. This is how this story ends. But actually it never ends. Because the search for justice is a journey that begins anew every day. And in this journey, we all have a role.